Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. Back here live. I'm your host, Sal, with my co-host, Monty. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, dude? What's up to everybody in the chat? I got a fun episode ahead. March Madness.
Yep, appreciate all you guys who are in the chat. Thank you to Stan, 1T, Brooklyn, everybody who's here. I appreciate the comments, like, subscribe, share it with everybody you know. We appreciate you guys. Moderators incoming to control the madness going on in the chat. Oh, Jay's in here. Everybody's in here. I love it. All right. So we're late because I was late. I was too busy chatting with 1T on his space, and then he told me to come upstairs for a while, and I was just kind of lying on my couch, so I apologize. That's why we're here at this time. So, Monty, what's going on? We got a special episode planned for everybody entitled Pick Six Game Theory and QB prospect madness. So we're going to go through a couple of things here. We're going to go over how we would try to game theory out using pick six in the draft, because that is the topic of conversation right now with no new news coming out of Giants world. And we're going to go over Monty's awesome post this week of the bracket of QB prospects. See how we do. So first, before we get started, do you have any updates, my friend?
See, looks like Kentucky's about to lose, but football wise, yeah, man. I mean, not really any big updates in the Giants world. It looks like we signed that offensive tackle from the Lions. We brought back Isaiah Hodgins. No details on that. There's some news there, but we did get some rumors today that I think some rumors that might fit in a little bit into the game theory. Do you want to? I don't think we should read too deeply into them, but do you want to, go over them a little bit and kind of talk about those a little bit?
Yeah. So a couple of rumors that have been circulating. So obviously, by now, all of you guys know the big topic of discussion is: will the Giants take a quarterback at 6? Will they trade up? Will they be outflanked by the Minnesota Vikings, who have traded with the Houston Texans to acquire the 23rd pick to go along with the 11th pick? So we're going to go through all those scenarios. But the rumor circulating today, I guess the latest rumor, is that the Giants like J.J. McCarthy, but they were very into Jaden Daniels. And that might have been their preference. But they seem to be under the impression that he is going somewhere in the top 3 picks, and they feel like he's out of reach. And I think that's where they've landed. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. It's interesting. Like, even if it is true, I don't think it is really that exciting and newsworthy. It just kind of, we didn't know where Jaden Daniels would necessarily fall on their list. And I mean, I guess, we still don't necessarily know on Caleb or Drake May if that's true. But, the way I would take that is that at one point in time, we talked about this. We've been talking about the draft all offseason. And at one point in time, we mocked Jaden Daniels to the Giants, and we were very much like, it seems like Drake May and Caleb Williams were zero chance that those guys would make it to you. And we're like, look at guys like Jaden Daniels and JJ McCarthy. We had a preference of JJ McCarthy, but we thought Jaden Daniels is similar tier, and that he would be a preference by the NFL. So not really surprising if it's true. But it's definitely interesting, especially, given some of the rumors we heard from our buddy D-Kit has talked about that. He's heard that the Giants have 4 guys they like. And if that is true, then that would lead you to believe that is Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and JJ McCarthy. That if any of this is true, that was what I would take away from that.
If it's true. There's also rumors circulating that the Giants, may be interested in Michael Penix Jr. I think this all circulates around the idea that we've all been sort of tossing around that have watched this class closely for a while now. We feel this is probably at least a 5 quarterback class, maybe a 6 quarterback class, depending on how you view Bo Nix. And the Giants need a quarterback, we think. So they've got to figure out how they're going to go about it. It kind of stinks, as you and I talked about, like when you're drafting 6 overall in a deep quarterback class and you need a quarterback, you typically are going to have a good one fall to you and not have to go too crazy. And It looks like for the first time in NFL history, there's a possibility that 4 quarterbacks get taken in the top 5. That's never happened before, and that may very well happen this year. If it doesn't happen, then the Giants will have their pick of at least one of the quote top 4 that they like. But if it does happen, then the Giants have to figure out are they going to be one of those teams in the top 5 to get those quarterbacks, which obviously requires a trade up. So it is going to be an interesting process. So we might as well jump into this episode. So there's not a lot of news going on. Um, Obviously, we're all waiting for the draft, and we're going to have some cool draft stuff coming up, right as we approach the final month here. But the concept of this episode is really kind of game theorying out all the different algorithmic ways to approach how this pick six may work out and how we would approach it if we were in Joe Shane's shoes. So there's a lot of different outcomes that are possible here. And we might as well start the process of the game theory by talking about the different outcomes for the Giants in those top 6 picks. So outcome number 1, sit at 6, take BPA, whether it's a quarterback or if a quarterback's not there, just take your best wide receiver or maybe a tackle, whatever they like, right?
Hope not
That's
that one.
Hope not that one, but that's option number 1, right? Is just sit at 6, don't move. Say, I like certain quarterbacks, maybe I'll take them. I like certain receivers, I'll take them if I have to, but I'm not budging. There's too much value with this pick. Option number 2 is I need a quarterback. And just like we said, there's a possibility that 4 quarterbacks, if you like 4, could go in the top 5. You got to trade up. You got to trade up then to secure your ability to take one. So Mason is, I'm sorry, I'm distracted because he's captivated by my dome. It's a well-shaped, it's a well-shaped cranium. I agree. So, so option number 2 is trade up. Trade up into various places to figure out if you can capture a quarterback without stressing out who might fall to you. You can put up Jaree's comment. I just blinked twice. Thank you for all the commentary about my lack of hair. So, which I shave on my own. Option number 3 is the Giants actually trade down. They decide we're not taking whoever's at 6. We're not trading up. We're going to acquire value because we're sitting on a blue chip prospect stock. We are trading down. So those are the 3 broad options, but within each of those 3 potential buckets, there are all sorts of variables and permutations. So why don't we start with option number 1, the sit back and take your player. Let's approach that, Monty. Play that out and how you think this is going to play out on draft day.
So it's interesting, man. I was fighting back for a while that I really did not think that there was a world where one of these 4 quarterbacks would get to us. And if it did, I thought it would have to be something really crazy would happen, like JJ McCarthy is picked higher than we think, and a guy like Jaden Daniels or Drake May fall. Teams like I have to jump up on this now. Looks like under a normal situation, there might be a world that the Minnesota Vikings trade up and they get ahead of us. They have those 2 first now. And, that would then, if that happens, would leave the Giants without one of the top 4 QBs at pick 6. Maybe there's a still world. They like a Penix or a Nix or something like that. But it seems as far as where we're hearing out of the NFL draft world is that there are 4 top 10 quarterbacks right now, and it seems like we might have 4 top 5 quarterbacks. So we'll see. I mean, there's a scenario where that happens, where they trade up and we don't make the move, we stay, and we can talk about maybe if we go wide receiver there. And then there's the other world where, maybe there's a position where the Cardinals are really not trying to trade back to a spot like 11 with the Vikings. And they are set on one of these top 3 wide receivers. But what they would love is to trade back to 6 and still get really the number 2 wide receiver on their board. So, if it comes down to if we're going to call their bluff or not. And, if we're okay, if the Vikings give up too much that we're not willing to match it, what are we gonna do then as far as the quarterback situation goes? So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Sal?
So I look at it this way. There are three possible trading teams from where that could theoretically push pressure onto the Giants in terms of trying to get there. The first one is obviously the New England Patriots. I don't expect. Obviously, it doesn't look like the Bears are trading Caleb Williams. They have traded Justin Fields for a bag of peanuts. They're ready to move on, and they just wanted to get him out of the building so they can reset, try to do right by him, and move on. So that pick is probably locked in. There Even if the Commanders were trading, which I don't think anybody thinks they are, they're not trading with us, so that's not an option. So you've got the Patriots. They're the first team that could trade. Now that's a possible trade partner. I'm not, I'm still. It's not clear yet what the Patriots are doing. Wolf, their GM, comes from the Green Bay system. They generally believe in being very patient with quarterbacks. Building a roster. They may take a quarterback and be comfortable sitting him. They may not take a quarterback. They may decide to build up the roster with players all over. That might be a reasonable trade candidate. Now, by all accounts, they're quietly and politely telling people no, thank you. We're not interested right now. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't entertain an offer. Because, for example, let's say they're set on Jaden Daniels. That's the rumor, right? That they want Jaden Daniels at
Yep.
3. If the Commanders take Daniels at 2 and the Patriots view Drake May as maybe someone they don't want, then they may find themselves willing to deal the pick on draft night. So that's sort of option one right there in terms of within the option of trading up, like the opportunity to trade might come with the Patriots, but I don't think it's going to happen until draft night. I mean, I know whether it was real Ricky or fake Ricky, whoever it was that said, oh, the Giants are on the verge of trading with the Patriots. I'm not sure if any of that is true or not. I've heard other
Yeah.
rumors that they might have been in talks to them. Either way, it sounds like it's the kind of thing that would probably drag out till draft night anyway. So I think that you have to first explore the possibility that you may have access to a guy like Drake May. And do you make a trade up until you know for sure that you don't have access to Drake May? What do you think?
It depends on their comfort with these quarterbacks. I mean, you got the rumor from Benjamin Albright today that they like Jaden Daniels. If they really were and Jaden Daniels and they also like Drake May, then yeah, you trade up the 3 and you're happy with whoever's there. It depends how their opinion is. But I think the better question is, do the Patriots trade that pick without knowing which quarterback falls to them? And I'd imagine that if they are going to trade it, there's a quarterback they would take and there's a quarterback they wouldn't take. And this is assumed that they would even trade it. I mean, I think the only thing we're going by here is that it seems like people haven't totally ruled out the Patriots from trading. It seems like they've totally ruled out the Bears. It seems like they've totally ruled out the Commanders. But although they've said like the Patriots have been approached and they haven't been interested with a trade, there has been some thought that maybe if the right quarterback wasn't there, they would be interested in trade. I'm not necessarily holding my breath for that situation, but I do think that there's a world that that could happen. Um, they're much more likely than the top 2 guys.
Yeah, I agree. So because it depends on how much let's just say for argument's sake, because you can go into a million different permutations here. But let's just say for argument's sake, the pick is only available if it's Drake May there at 3 and not Jaden Daniels. Let's just argue that for a second. If it's Drake May there at 3, how much more do the Giants have to value Drake May over, let's say, JJ McCarthy for them to be willing to trade up from 6 to 3? I think the historical value of going from 6 to 3 is 3 second-round picks.
Yeah,
Right,
about
that's
that.
what the Jets gave up to who was it? To Cleveland, I think, right?
The
No, not
Colts.
Cleveland, to the Colts to trade from 6 to 3. So you would be giving up your second this year and probably the next 2 year seconds to
Mhm.
go up 3 spots. You got to love that guy. Like you've got to love that guy to make that deal. Now, if
Yep.
I would say that the bar is extremely high for that. Like you have to be confident that you're willing to put your job on the line for that guy to hand over 3 second round picks to move up 3 spots in the first round. So would it be safe to say that like he has to be like far and away their favorite, like without hesitation, to make a deal like that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have to say they're like far and away their favorite in the class or anything like
No,
that,
no,
but
relative to the guy who's left, the guys who are
yeah,
left on the board.
yeah. I mean, I think it would say far and away just like a top level prospect that you feel isn't going to be around in most draft classes. A guy that you're just in love with and think is a rare prospect that you're not in position to be able to get very often. Um, that's where you make a move like that. Most of the time, prospects like that are not traded away, and
Right.
that's why you see a lot of these trade ups not work so well with these quarterbacks because for a team to trade out of it, it's normally not the Andrew Lucks of the world. It's not the Joe Burrows of the world. It is the Bryce Youngs of the world. And good really good prospects, but not the elite ones. And if they see either these any of these guys as an elite quarterback prospect and the opportunity becomes to trade up, then yeah, I do think you make a move like that. I don't know if the 3 seconds is as likely anymore with us trading away, but maybe something with similar points like a future first and a second or something like
If that pick's for sale, that's the pick. I always thought that when the Minnesota Vikings made their trade to get that second pick in the second round, they were really aiming to try to get up to the third overall pick. And so, in terms of draft trade value, I would imagine that if that third pick became available, Wolf is calling Minnesota and saying, give me those picks and then some. What's it going to take? What do you think it would take to get from 11 to 3 for the Vikings? And what would the comparable cost be for the Giants to beat that?
I mean, look, we can talk about this with 4 even, but I think the recent example to use on this one was the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers paid 3 firsts to go from 12 to 3 to go get Trey Lance. I think you're looking at something like that. I think you're probably looking at Minnesota is going to have to pay 11, 24, I believe is what it is, and then a 2025 first. Probably the price to come up to 3.
Now, keep in mind, the Vikings do not have a second round pick this year. They do not have a second round pick next year because they were packaged in the deal to get the 23rd overall pick. And I don't believe they have a third round pick this year either. So if they make that deal, they will have made the deal to get their quarterback, but they won't pick in the second. They won't pick in the third this year. They won't pick in the first next year. They won't pick in the second next year. That is an all in, push your chips in kind of move for one player. So you really got to love that player to make that move. So,
Absolutely.
so like for a guy like Drake May, I can actually see it, believe it or not. Like, I mean, it's a lot, but I think for a guy like Drake May, who I know there are people who have varying views on him, but I mean, all the noise aside, all the maybe lack of developmental areas in some the lack of development in some areas aside, the footwork, whatever it may be, the talent of Drake May remains extraordinarily high end. We're talking top 5 in the NFL potential. It's a
He's
special level of talent.
yeah, he's genuinely one of the most talented quarterback prospects we've ever seen. He is right there, and you can say the same thing. Obviously I think Caleb Williams is more talented, but you can say the same type of thing. Despite some flaws you might find in their game, the talent level is you can't argue it.
Right. So I think for that price, they may say, hey, like Monty, like the Giants called and said, we want Drake May. What are we offering? We got 6, we got 47, we have first. I would imagine it's going to cost us 647 in next year's first, right?
That's basically the equivalent because when you stack up the points of the picks, basically 6 and 47 is the equivalent to 11 and 24. Those are almost Giants is a little bit more, but those are almost the exact same. So I think at that point, yeah, you would then throw a first next year, and you would be like, that's my offer. And it's like, do you want to trade all the way back to 11 or do you want to go a little bit further back into the second and get your guy otherwise? And So, I mean, I'll say, like, while we're on that topic a little bit, that's something I've been saying. People are talking about how Minnesota is in the driver's seat. They can beat the Giants. And my one argument would be I don't know. And everybody in the chat can say how they feel. Personally, I would not trade in a vacuum, talk about quarterback discussion aside. I would not trade pick 6 and 47 for 11 and 24. I would rather have pick 6 and 47. I think the gap of talent between 24 and 47 is not gigantic. I think it's a very deep class where there's a lot of good players who could go 24 and could also go 47. I do think there is a huge gap between the blue chip player that you're going to get at 6 and the likelihood you're not going to get a blue chip player at 11. If you do, it's going to be a position like tight end, which is a huge drop off in position of value to a top end wide receiver.
Tackle if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Tackle if you're lucky, like, but again, I agree, like the value is too high. So in this scenario, and I know this is taking a little while, but we're, like I said, we're doing the game through the game theory discussion here. We're kind of talk through these scenarios. In this scenario, if the Patriots make the pick available, whether it's on draft night or whatever, let's say the Giants are equally enamored with both Drake May, Jaden Daniels, but for this argument, Drake May, right? I personally, I don't know how you feel, Monty, but I'd probably pull the trigger on that trade. I would hand over pick 6, pick 47, and next year's first to go ahead and secure the 3rd overall pick for Drake May. How about you?
I would as well. I just don't think that there are players like Drake May in every single draft class. Nonetheless, players like Drake May that are available for trade in every single draft class, which is why I probably don't think he'll end up being traded. But for this experiment, I would absolutely do it if he did become available.
Right. By the way, we are going to use Drake May as the 3rd overall pick in this scenario because Albert Breer is reporting that it seems like the Commanders are leaning fairly strongly towards Jaden Daniels. So,
It's the
for what it's
betting
worth,
favorite as well. Yeah.
right. So that seems to be where things are going. I would make the trade also, without doubt. And if obviously the Vikings are probably going to empty out everything and say in this scenario and say, hey, we're giving you 3 firsts. We got nothing left. We got no draft class left. Here, take it. If the Patriots come back to you and say you got to up your offer, I'm probably looking at them at that point and saying no. You want to go from 3 to 11, be my guest. Take your picks. If you want to go from 3 to 6, still have a first and a second in this class, you make the deal. I draw the line right there. At
Yeah.
some point, you got to draw the line with a GM. I think you have to kind of stop it at some point and say this is my offer. Take it or leave it.
And look, I'm not gonna let I agree with you in theory. I mean, obviously, we can talk where I'm not gonna let a 4th round pick swap or some shit like that stop me from making a trade like this. But
Sure, like a
but
nominal move.
But when we're talking about you got to throw another second in, you got to throw another first in, you got to throw a player, things like that. It's like, yeah, that is where I draw the line as far as like throwing in a premium picker player.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're making the trade, if you're the Patriots, you're securing a blue chip prospect at 6. You're not doing that at 11, as you mentioned, right? Not likely to be. And if it is, you're not in a position to take a tight end with the status of your roster. Absolutely not. Not with your first pick. You got to either take a wide receiver or you probably need to take a tackle. One of those two. You'll have access to a blue chipper at 6. You may not at 11. And if I'm Joe Shane, I'm putting it right there. That's so 1T is asking, if you want to pull it up, what is the walk away point for either 3 or 4 if we're in a bidding war with Minnesota? And that's kind of what we're talking about, bro. Like for 3, I'm saying my walk away point is the pick swap, our second this year, our first next year. And if it looks like they want a lot more than that, I say no, I'm walking away. If it's like, please throw me a bone, like pick swap or something, okay, just to finalize the deal.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, you're happy to talk through that and give a little here, take a little here, but yeah, as far as premium assets, that's about the point. But I think that's kind of where we're leading to next is what about 4 and what if Drake May is off the board? And
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, so what do you think then if Drake May comes off the board at 3 and you're sitting there at 4? And it looks like the Vikings are trying to trade up for JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. So now in this scenario, all 3 of the top 3 have gone 1, 2, 3. The Cardinals have made the pick available. Monte Ossenfort's out there saying we're open for business. He's willing to hear offers, which is the right approach to take.
Yep.
And to that, I'm going to say this. I'm 100% confident. Maybe I shouldn't be 100% confident. I'm like 99% confident. Monte Ossenfort has no desire to trade with anybody but the Giants. And here's why I say that.
You're right.
The Giants are at 6. They want a quarterback. He knows that. So they're definitely a candidate for a trade. The 7th overall pick is the Titans. They're not trading up. The 8th overall pick is the Falcons. They're not trading up, not for a quarterback. They just signed Kirk Cousins. The 9th overall pick is actually, did I miss someone? Who was 8th, 9th? I'm forgetting who 9th is. Unless it was the Falcons 9th and somebody else was 8th.
Falcons are 8. So it's 7 Tennessee, 8 Falcons, 9 Chicago, 10
Chicago, of course. Chicago's 9th. Chicago could trade up. They might be a candidate trade from 9 to 3, but Chicago, in theory, like the idea of pairing Caleb Williams with Marvin Harrison Jr. is terrifying. Getting the top 2 prospects, not different than what the not too dissimilar to what the Texans did last year, where they basically took C.J. Stroud and the best player in the draft, and Will Anderson on the next pick. In theory, I guess the Bears could do that, right? They could trade up, but they don't have the assets right now to do it. Right? They don't have a second round pick this year. I don't think they have a ton of picks next year. So the Bears would have to kind of empty out the coffers a little bit to go from 9 to 3. You're talking about 2 firsts and a second, something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more, something like that, to go from 2 to 4, from 9 to 4. I mean, it's going to be expensive. 10 is the Jets. The Jets are in win now mode. I don't doubt their ability to potentially mix things up and take a quarterback here at some point, but I don't think they're trading up for one. 11 is the Vikings. So there you go. There's not a lot between the Giants and the Vikings. I have almost no fear that anybody's trading other than the Giants and the Vikings for that 4th pick. You just committed, if you're the Arizona Cardinals, to Kyler Murray. You gave him a huge contract. You could have walked away potentially this year. You said you're not walking away. He's your quarterback. That's cool. Here is your wide receiver room right now, Arizona Cardinals. Michael Wilson, the rookie from Stanford. Chris Moore, Greg Dortch. Those are your starters. That's your wide receiver room. Your backups are Zach Pascal, Dan Chisena, Andre Bichellia. And then you got guys like Jeff Smith, Daniel Arias, and Caden Davis. You have, I think, the worst wide receiver room in the NFL. Now, Michael Wilson is a kid I like, but he was, if you guys remember from last year's draft, a talented kid from Stanford, really, really good player, but always hurt, not super reliable. You've got nothing in that wide receiver room, absolutely zero, and you just lost Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs. You need a wide receiver, and you need a good one, like a great one. You cannot screw this up. So if I'm Ossenfort, I'm saying to Joe Schoen, oh, yeah, I'm comfortable going to 11. I'll find a wide receiver there or later. I have lots of picks. Is that acceptable? Because at 11, who are you probably getting? Brian Thomas Jr. He's a good receiver, but he's a tier below the top 3.
Significant tier.
I would murder Monte Ossenfort if I was the owner of the Cardinals and I walked away without a top 3 receiver in this class. Absolutely murder him. You cannot commit that kind of money to Kyler Murray and have a chance at one of these guys and walk away without a receiver, especially when Kyler is good and you're actually staying with him. So, again, if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm thinking I have zero concern that you're trading to 11. Like, I mean, and I know that's a gamble because, he could in theory. Mm-hmm. But if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm thinking to myself, this guy, he's not going to 11. He only wants to deal with me. By the way, the Cardinals, for those who think they need picks, they have 11 picks in this class. They have 2 first-round picks. They have 6 picks in the top 100 and 7 picks in the top 104 and 11 picks overall. They do not have a lack of picks. They have a lack of players. They have a lack of talent, especially at receiver. I'm calling his bluff if I'm Joe Schoen. If Monte Ossenfort calls me and says, I got an offer from Minnesota to get their 2 firsts, I need this and this and this for you to come up and take this pick from me. I don't know, Monty. I'm almost tempted to call his bluff and say you're not going to make that trade.
Mhm.
How would
So,
you approach it?
one thing I will throw into this theory is the Cardinals could do what they did last year if they made that trade. They could trade back to 11, and then they could call a team like the Atlanta Falcons, who are going to be sitting there with a guy like Aroma Dunze on the board, and they really don't need to add another offensive weapon because they've been doing it draft after draft after draft. They really need to add defense, and they could say, "Hey, let me trade up to 8 and then go get Roma Dunze." So you can't rule out something like that, but I definitely do hear where you're coming from. I think the Arizona Cardinals, for as much as they want to play this game where I trade out, they're making it loud and clear that they're going wide receiver in the first round. They have 2 picks. They'd get 3 if they traded back, which is a whole nother discussion because then you have 3 fifth-year options, 3 guys coming up for contract.
What are you doing with that?
That's a whole other thing
If
if you
well,
make that trade.
stop there for a second. It's not a whole other
Yeah,
thing because it's an important. You made the point earlier, and I loved it. If you're the Cardinals and you take the package of picks 11 and 24 as part of a package to trade the 4th pick with the Vikings, you now have pick 11, 23, 24. I think that's what you have, right? Something like that.
27, 24.
27, 11, 24, 27. You have something like 60 to 70 million dollars in 50-year guaranteed 50-year option money if they all hit, locked up in 4 years. That is probably not tenable. Now, you could say they can get the asset, they can trade the player. That's all true. You have 4 years to make that decision. But I don't think that's an ideal scenario for a team. And again, what are you getting out of it? You're losing Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep. And if you can't come to a franchise tag with, or can't come to contract 2 of these guys, you got to let one potentially hit an open market. We're not even talking about, I don't remember who the Cardinals took in the 2nd round last year. That's another guy that's going to come off. But ideally for contract purposes, you do not want these many guys in the same timeline. Personally, if I was the Cardinals, I'd prefer a first next year and a second than I would to getting another first, which is interesting they made that trade, but maybe they're talking the Cardinals according to Pretty Ricky. Maybe it is what they prefer. I'm not sure, but yeah, I will say though, like I was saying, the Cardinals clearly want wide receiver. To me, either you can take one with one of those late ones. I think it would be a huge mistake to trade out of that pick, go to 11, and take the 4th best wide receiver. Because, in my opinion, at least the way I look at it, I like Brian Thomas. I really do. I think Brian Thomas, he has a strong argument. If I had to put my wide receiver 4 today, I need to do a little bit more research into it. But it'd probably be Brian Thomas. But I'll say Brian Thomas is a lot closer to being my wide receiver 8 than he is to being my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, there's a chasm.
There's a lot of good guys after those top 3, but they are not close to the top 3 wide receivers.
The top 3, yeah, the top 3 guys are, in my opinion, they're kind of a province of the rich. If you have a quarterback, they're perfect for you. If you don't have a quarterback, it's a tough decision. But if you have a quarterback and you pass up on one of those 3, I think your owners, your fan base are going to be looking at you real funny. Like, why? Why did you pass up on those 3? Especially if your wide receiver room is Michael Hall, Chris Moore, Greg Dortch, blah, blah, blah. You need an impact wide receiver, Arizona. You need to make the Kyler Murray investment work. And it's a huge investment. It's a multi-year investment. There's no out in this. Like, I guess there is in the sense that you could walk away and eat a crap ton of dead cap. But they probably need to see this through. The best way to try to see this through is get a high impact wide receiver. So again, if I'm Joe Shane and I get a call from Monte Ossenford and he's like, I'm going to move down to 11, I'm going to say, go right ahead. Have fun. Why are you calling me then? Right?
Yeah.
Now, let's just assume for a second Joe Shane does want to get to 4 just to secure one of his 4 quarterbacks, right? What's his motivation? It's the only motivation I can think of for him to make the deal is, one, he just wants the security of having that pick, right? Then you're guaranteed to get one of your top 4. And you're taking away the possibility of the real threat, which is what happens at pick 5, right?
Yep.
You're the pick 5 pick with the Chargers. I think that's the threat. That is where the big threat lies for the Giants in getting one of these top 4 guys. So I'm not saying I wouldn't trade with Ossenford. I'm just saying I wouldn't go running begging for the pick. I think what I'm getting at, folks, is I think the Giants and the Cardinals make perfect trade partners.
Mhm.
I think they match very well. If the Cardinals want to make the trade, I think that going to 6 assures them in this scenario of getting a top 2 wide receiver in their mind, if not the best, depending on what happens at 5. And it assures them of getting some draft equity. And for the Giants, it assures them one of their top 4 quarterbacks. This is a perfect match. And this is the trade that, if it were going to happen, this is the trade that should happen. It's the Giants to the Cardinals, 6-4. What do you think?
Yeah, man. Look, we've been hearing Giants fans all offseason yelling "smoke, smoke, smoke." This is smoke, to smoke. I'll tell you, if anything that's related to the Giants that I've seen smoke, it seems like the Cardinals trading down to 11. And it's not that I don't like. Look, I mean, like I said, Pretty Ricky was hitting a lot, and he was saying that
Batting a
that
thousand.
yeah, and he was saying that the Vikings had like legitimate, like productive talks with the Cardinals. So there is something to that. But at the same time, like I do think that the Cardinals could be, positioning themselves to try to make a trade to force the Giants to make a trade because they know that they want one of these quarterbacks. And that could be the position. We don't know that, but that they could know that. As an NFL team who has a lot more knowledge than we do on this situation. So yeah, I think it comes down to that, and then it's up to Joe Shane to gauge if this is real, if they would make that trade, and again, like you said, they're not out of the woods if they wouldn't. Then there's the Chargers to worry about. So, look, I've said it. It's absolute bullshit that we're even sitting here talking about this situation. The first time in NFL history this would be that 4 QBs go top 5. The only time that 4 QBs even went top 10, it went 1, 3, 7, 10. So we would have the option of the third best quarterback in that situation. If this is true, it's absolute bullshit. The Giants got screwed, but at the end of the day,
You got to get
look,
over it.
yeah, you're gonna sit here and whine
Yeah.
about it, or you're gonna
Yeah.
go get your quarterback.
That's it. This is all about playing the game, right? You got to play the game. You got to play you got to play the hand that's dealt to you, right? It's a tough board. You've got to play it. And your goal is not to be, upset about the board. Your goal is to make money. So you got to figure this out. I think the Cardinals ultimately make outstanding trade partners for the Giants for the reasons I just mentioned. I think at the end of the day, Austin Fort would like to accumulate maybe an asset, see if he can get something. I don't think he has any intrinsic motivation to move beyond the Giants at 6. Maybe the latest would be a team at 7 or 8, but those teams are probably not going up. I think the Giants are his mark. I think he will do everything he can to leverage the Vikings to get the Giants to come up and make that trade. I firmly believe that. Now, maybe I'm completely crazy and I'm way off, but I really feel like that's what's happening here. That Austin Fort would like the Giants to give him a deal so he can still get his wide receiver and pick up an asset. I don't think he's looking to play big games. I think he knows with the Giants he still gets a top tier wide receiver, and by giving the pick to the Giants, he's pushing one of those wide receivers right back into his lap at 6. He's getting double benefit out of this. He's getting a pick and he's pushing a better receiver down to him. That makes sense to me. What you said that he could trade back up to 8, you could, but now you're talking about a two-step process where you've introduced a lot of variables and you can miss, right? Maybe you can't make that trade. Maybe the team at 8 says, "I'm not making this trade with you." Right? I need to take Dallas Turner right here, right? Or whatever. I just signed Kirk Cousins. I need to win, right? Or maybe I'll take a receiver, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't know. Like they could take Romatunze or Malik
Yeah.
Neighbors, depending on who falls.
Maybe Chicago Bears are saying like, "Yeah, no, I'm not letting you jump me for this. I'll move up
I,
too."
I'll move up. I'll take whatever I have because I'm in win now mode with my new quarterback, right
Yep.
away. I need to get my you've introduced a lot of variables and lost control if you trade down that far. This is not last year. So Austin Fort, in my opinion, is in a position where he can only lose if he plays too many games. I don't know what kind of GM he is. We'll find out. But in my opinion, this is screaming Giants and Cardinals trade. So that's what I have my eyes on. So let's talk about value, assuming a trade can be worked out. Austin Fort plays games. Joe Shane says, "Go to hell. We're not playing games. Let's make a deal." Give me a fair value from going 6-4.
I think a fair value is a second round pick. I think if you pay a second round pick, I think the Giants will probably be asking to do a second round pick next year. They'll probably ask for 47, and it's going there. They'll probably going back there. It depends how much the Vikings are willing to put up. If you compare the values of, like I said, of 6 and 47, it's almost equivalent to that 11 and 24 that people are saying is enough to come up and uh go get that fourth pick. So I think in the situation that that's what they're offering, that's what a fair thing to put forward. And look, if you are convinced that the Vikings are going to do it, if you don't do it, and that's your quarterback, and that's who you love, and you feel you need to make the move, then it sucks. But I would do it. I would make the move. What about
I'm
you?
gonna
What do you?
I'm gonna counter you. I'm gonna play Austin for it. You want a quarterback.
Mhm.
I want next year's first. What do you say to him?
I'm saying next year's first is off the table.
You say to him, go to hell. Right?
Yep.
Go. This is where you have to have the go to hell mentality. Like, go ahead and trade to 11. It's fine.
Yep.
Take those picks. I would
Yeah.
agree. I think my offer to him would be next year's second or next year's third.
So
Because
no, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I think next year's second would probably be a fair offer. Um, you know, and I would say, here's next year's second. Give it to me. Give me your pick. It's at 4. You take next year's second. You still have plenty of picks in this draft. You have 2 firsts in this draft. You're walking away with ammo next year. That in case things don't work out, you have more ammo to do things next year. And you're not losing anything. You're basically getting a free second round pick. You're
Yep.
losing nothing. Take the pick and the end. Like, this is where I think Joe Shane has to play the staring game and say, I'm going to win this staring contest. And I'm going to offer him next year's second. I don't think I'm even giving up 47, to be honest. I think I'm standing pretty firm on next year's second. I think he'll blink. Because if he doesn't blink and he says fine, he has 2 choices. One is he can wreck his own draft status by going down to 11. That's on him if he does that. Or 2, he can just take Marvin Harrison right there. Like, he can just not get anything. But if he does that, guess what? Now you're dealing with 5, right? And you can deal. You're in you're in a little bit better position. Although 5 might be trickier than 4 to trade. At the end of the day, I say take a tough stance. I think I would lock the deal down. I would stay as firm as I can, as long as I can on next year's second. Um,
Mhm.
but I probably, back in my head, I'm thinking I'm willing to give them 47 to close this
Yeah,
deal out. Right? At the end of the
I agree.
day, I'm willing to go to 47 to close this deal out. But that gets me my quarterback, and I can live to fight another day. But I think that's kind of where I take this, and I wouldn't be shocked if this is how it goes down. Right? For the Giants, if they really want a quarterback and they want to lock in a top 4, if they have a top 4, that I would not be shocked if that's how this goes down. The idea that the Cardinals are driving their stock value all the way down from 4 to 11, to me, doesn't make sense. It intrinsically does not make sense for where they are as a team, where their money is tied up, where their future is. So I'm taking that knowledge and saying, let's close this deal out, and I'm willing to pay the tax, so to speak, of this year's second, to make sure that I don't have to deal with what awaits me at pick 5.
Mhm.
Because at pick 5, the LA Chargers have a squad that needs a lot of help. A new head coach, a new GM. They have the pick of the litter of wide receivers, tackles, whatever they want there. And they're in prime position to trade down. They're in prime position to trade down. And I think, unlike the Cardinals, they're under no pressure to have to take a top wide receiver here. They do not have that same pressure. They are in a little bit of a reset mode. I think that they would gladly accept the offer by the Minnesota Vikings let them move up into the 5th spot and get ahead of the Giants and take that quarterback.
Yep.
So,
And
and this is
and
go
help
ahead.
and Harbaugh gets to help. His quarterback get to the spot that's a great spot for him to fall in.
Yeah.
So Vikings.
Which is why I go back to the Vikings. I mean, the Cardinals and the Giants are perfect trade partners. If you're Joe
Mhm.
Shane, you want to make sure your goal is not necessarily to get to 3. Your goal is to get ahead of the Chargers. You need to get ahead of the Chargers. If you can get ahead of the Chargers, There you go.
And not to mention, Ryan Cowden and Monte Ossenfort have a really good relationship. Those two were the VP and director of player personnel over in Tennessee. So you have that connection. They already worked out the Isaiah Simmons trade. It's something worth considering where that's trade. Now, looking at these from a points aspect, Sal, you know, the difference between 6 and 4 is 200 points. So, you're looking at, 430 for the 47th pick, and you're paying a 230 point premium to make that done, which makes sense. You know, there's the rule that I've brought up on here before that research done by Daniel Jeremiah and the NFL.com team that historically it's about 120%. A little more, a little bit less sometimes, depending on the trade. But trading up for your quarterback, the quarterback premium is typically about 120%. If we put that on to the Arizona Cardinals pick, so we're looking at the Giants and we're looking at the Vikings and considering potentially a little bit of a bidding war, it puts you at 2160. So basically what that would do is you would add 430 to the Giants 1600. That would put you at 2030. So you'd probably have to do something like the Giants' fourth round pick, which is like an 80 point or something like that. That might be a world if you are really like going hard in a negotiation. I think that's about as far as you can take this thing. Now, if becomes a situation like the San Francisco 49ers, as we kind of referenced earlier, and they went all in, I guess. They blew every one of these historical numbers out the water and gave up 3 firsts to go from 12 to 3. That's the only way I really see where the Minnesota Vikings, especially lacking second round picks, can just go, this is what I'm offering. And beat it, Giants. Go ahead, do it. And unfortunately, I think that's where I pull out. I would hate it. It would stink. I
It's
would
your
would
walkaway
be
point.
Yeah, there'd be a point. There's a very real possibility at that point. We are leaving this draft without a top quarterback. That is, once you make that decision, that's a very possible situation. But that would be my walkaway point, and that's where go ahead, Vikings, you won.
If the Vikings want it that bad, they can have it. That's kind of how I look at it. As much as I like JJ, who I assume would be the quarterback in play here, and I think he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback, that's tough. And I mean, that's the Giants are definitely not in a position to make that kind of trade. That is the kind of value I would trade for Caleb Williams.
Yep.
I'm not trading that for
Drake May.
Maybe Drake May, definitely Caleb. I don't think I'm trading that personally for JJ. As much as I like him, you have to have some reasonable value assigned to the player and the pick at which you're moving up to. So, no, if the Vikings want to empty out their coffers and basically say we don't want first round pick for 3 years, we don't want second round picks for a couple of years, we don't want third round picks. If they want to make that trade, that's fine. But I think that the Giants could probably get this done from 6 to 4. But to your point, let's say you lose the bidding war, right? The first 3 picks are quarterbacks, and the Vikings win the bidding war somehow, and they get to 4 to the Cardinals, because that's a possibility. And the top 4 are off the board. At that point, there's not much trade value left at 5. So my guess is that the Chargers would probably either look for a trade for a receiver if somebody wants one, or just take the best player on their board, which brings the Giants to 6. And now you have a choice to make. And this is where you better love 5 quarterbacks in this class, because you now have to make a decision. Are you taking the best receiver? Because either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors or Rumadunze, 2 of those guys are going to be there in this scenario. At that pick, it's hard to go wrong with one of those guys because they're blue chippers. Are you taking one of them, or are you taking Michael Penix Jr. here? So let's walk through that exercise. And everybody knows I'm a huge Michael Penix Jr. fan, but I want to walk through this exercise in the minds of Joe Shane. What are you doing?
Tough, man. I mean, look, if you believe in 5 quarterbacks and you think Michael Penix can be a franchise quarterback and you are ready to commit to him as a franchise quarterback, then you take him. I don't think that like you play too many games unless like you really think this guy is gonna fall to end of the first or something, which doesn't I don't it seemed less and less like it's gonna be the case. I think you just take him. But with that said, there's a world that that's not the case. When we were talking earlier, one thing I brought up is look, there's it seems like the thing that's going to ultimately end this Daniel Jones relationship outside of the play is the injuries. There's a rumor going around. I know it was on BBI had it where there's seemingly this neck problem is still an issue with Daniel Jones, and he's behind schedule on knee recovery. It's a rumor, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows what it is, but regardless, we know he's dealing with those issues. We know that Michael Penix went to the combine and everything checked out well. And that's a good thing. And I think that's going to be enough for a lot of teams. My question is it going to be enough for Joe Shane? Because look, when they gave Daniel Jones this contract, they didn't give it to him like with like these massive red flags of ongoing issues. He had a fully healthy season. I'm sure the doctors were comfortable with everything that they had at the time, and they made that commitment. And one injury, and suddenly they're back. They're back to square one, where they're
Can you
worried about this.
can you put up 1T's comment there on the
Yeah.
board, because I think it's worth discussing.
Um.
It just
But right now they're back to square one. And my question would be, does Joe Shane, like the guy who just made a commitment and the guy who had an injury history and it blew up in his face, is he gun shy now on a guy like Michael Penix? Rightful or not, whether he should be gun shy, if that's an overreaction, is that something that's realistic? I think it could be.
Yeah. The to answer this question of whether or not to take him, the first question you have to ask is, do you think he's a guy you can work with as a franchise quarterback? Does he have the requisite tools, athleticism, you name it, the traits that your coach thinks I can turn into a winning franchise quarterback? I believe he does. I think a lot of us believe he does. I think you've come around to think he does, minus some of the athleticism traits. I think as a passer, we all agree he's a very advanced passer, and I think you can design a high-powered offense around him that he can absolutely execute very well. I think the offensive line stuff is very much overblown. You need a functional offensive line. You don't need an elite offensive line. He gets the ball out very quickly, doesn't take sacks, and obviously you'll continue to work on that. Some people are making the comment, well, you can. I saw Sarge, welcome Sarge, and others said, well, you take it. The move is to take a Dunze and trade back up for Penix, and there's a discussion as to whether or not he'll be there. The other day, Dan Jeremiah released a mock. And he had Michael Penix going, I want to say he had him going 13 to the Raiders in the mock, something like that. And then when he talked about it, he said, oh, like, this will be fun. We'll talk about putting him here. He's got to go somewhere. Dan Jeremiah and a lot of these higher level NFL guys don't just put names on mocks in random places. And they've admitted this. They typically will mock guys who out of the blue show up somewhere, into a spot because they heard a rumor that somewhere in that area there are teams who are interested in that player. They may not assign that player on the mock to the exact team that's interested in them. They typically don't do that. But they, if Michael Penix Jr., who people were saying, oh, he's not on any of the mocks in the first round, all of a sudden he's at 13, right? If you start to see more mocks, and I think you will, where Penix is going in the teens, what you're learning is that a kid who had 2 fantastic seasons in college football, despite the injury history, 2 healthy seasons where he put up ungodly numbers, was a Heisman finalist this year, went to the national title game, played great in the semis, got roughed up a little bit against Michigan like everybody else, who had an outstanding combine performance throwing the ball, who apparently passed his medicals with, clean at the combine, is a great interview. Everybody loves him. Is it hard to imagine that there are a bunch of NFL teams who cannot find quarterbacks who are suddenly saying, you know what? I think this kid is a first-round player, and I'm willing to take him in the teens. I think that is, I've been saying this for a long time, I think that is far more likely to be the end result than him falling into the second round. Anything is possible. I'm not saying he's definitely going to go in the first, but I'm saying that at the end of the day, quarterback is the most valuable position in sports. If you start seeing more mocks, and I think you will in the next few weeks, with Penix in the teens, believe me, there are teams that have him at the top of their board ready to pounce on him. So again, you are at pick 6. The other 4 quarterbacks are gone. Daniel Jones has a busted neck, can't feel his arm supposedly. ACL may or may not be in good shape. Dude's out there doing whatever he's doing. I don't think he's in their future plans. The only functional quarterback you have on the roster right now is Drew Lock. Are you going to walk away from this class without a quarterback, or are you just going to say, screw everybody's stupid opinion about where this guy needs to go? I'm taking my quarterback, assuming you like him, right? I'm not saying reaching. This is not reaching. This is the team has done their evaluation. I guarantee you that the team is doing their evaluation on him, and they've come to the conclusion we can design a really powerful offense around this guy. This guy's legit. You just pull the trigger. In my opinion, this comes down to if he doesn't meet the threshold, you don't take him, right? If he's not good enough for you, you're not reaching for him. You just don't take him. You say, you know what, guys, we tried to trade up for the guys we wanted. We couldn't get there. That's all, right? And he just didn't meet the threshold. We didn't take him. We're taking the BPA, and then you figure something out, and you cross your fingers and pray you don't get fired, which you're probably going to get fired. Yeah, you're going to get fired, almost certainly, because you're going to have a shitty season with no hope. Yeah, Dable's in real trouble if this happens. Or do you give Dable a talented arm like Michael Penix Jr. and say, you know what? This kid has thrown for 9,000 yards or so in the last 2 years in college and has done nothing but win, has stayed healthy despite the injury history, shows every advanced skill you would want in a passer. Yes, he has some limitations as a runner, but he's athletic enough to run around and scramble and get first downs. He doesn't take sacks. He can run a modern NFL offense. Do you want him? Let's just take him right here, lock down our quarterback for the next few years, and move on. That's it. No trade, no nothing. Just take him. You still have 5 more picks in the draft. In my opinion, people can scream and yell all they want if this is how this plays out. If on draft night it plays out where the Giants can't get the other 4 guys, and you got a receiver like Neighbors, somebody sitting there, everybody's going to assume it's Neighbors. If the Giants walk up the card and take Michael Penix Jr., people are going to freak out. There's going to be a meltdown, and I don't care. This is not Daniel Jones. This is a real quarterback. This is a kid who's performed at the highest level, at the highest level. If they decide he's their guy, put in the card and don't play games. You will not get back to him in all likelihood. If he's going in the teens to somebody, you're not getting there from 47, folks. Not unless you're ready to give up next year's first round pick.
Yeah, man. Look, I think the main thing that's important to emphasize there is you have to have done your due diligence and decided like you're comfortable with making this franchise quarterback, and that comes from the person, the player, the injury history, all that stuff. You have to be comfortable with all that. And assuming that they came back, if we're assuming that is, I mean, there's plenty of reason to think why they would pull the trigger on this, in my opinion. I mean, when this is something I brought up to you, when has Joe Shane ever cared about the consensus views on these quarterbacks? When he was in Buffalo, they traded up for Josh Allen.
Twice.
Twice. A lot of people were saying Josh Allen for most of that draft process shouldn't be a top 10 pick. For most of that draft process.
He tried to get to 1. They tried to get to 1 for him. Yeah.
Yeah. He loved him, and he didn't care what anybody thought. His fans had a meltdown when they heard Josh Allen instead of Rosen. They had a meltdown. They signed Daniel Jones. Wasn't the right decision, but guess what? He didn't give a fuck. He did not care what anybody else's opinions were. He made his own decision on it, whether that's owner motivated or not. We will never know. But he made his decision, and he didn't care what other people thought. And I think, if he is in on Michael Penix, then I don't think he's going to care what other people think. And we, talk about people who have helped their draft stock this offseason. I don't think any quarterback has helped their draft stock more. I mean, his medicals looked good. Everybody loves him for everything when they're talking to him. They love the person. He is completely impressed with. He went and got his ass kicked in the national championship. I'm not talking about the team. I'm talking about him physically. They beat the shit out of him. And he showed up like 2 weeks later at the Senior Bowl despite being injured like not too long ago and went out there and competed. He went to the combine. He threw. He is going up and he is participating in everything he can do. He's interviewing well. His medicals are showing out great. And guess what? The Senior Bowl, do you know who coached him? Shea Teenery. That was his offensive coordinator. So he had all the time in the world to get to know the kid. Look, I don't know if they would take him 10. Michael Penix could be a guy we're talking about. Like Giants take him 6 if you believe in him, and then we're seeing him sitting there day 2 of the NFL draft. I don't know. It's possible.
It's all possible.
He's that type of prospect. I don't feel that way at JJ. I will bet any amount of money he won't be there in the second round. I don't know with Penix. He could go top 10. He could go second round. I don't know. There is a world where both those things happen. But I'm me. I have some issues with mobility and stuff like that. But I'll say, and it's something you've brought up before, is although he does not like run to create time for himself, he is consistently for 6 years of college football has been in the top 5 of pressure to sacks rate every single year. He does not convert pressures to sacks. He is able to manipulate the pocket. And, something from Bruce Feldman. Bruce Feldman, who was in relationship with a lot of these guys they're testing with, said Michael Penix supposedly, I don't know, but he apparently was running a sub 4.5 in training. Do I think he probably actually runs a sub 4.5? Probably not. Do I think you're going to be that far off from that? I don't think that either. I don't think you're saying that if he runs a 4.7. So, I think there's probably some functional athleticism there. Like, although that's not his game style, although I don't expect him to be a guy who's racing out of the pocket and making time and juking out defenders, I do think you could see a world where he has that. You can do some of that stuff you did with Daniel Jones, where nothing's there, run straight and use your athleticism, go get a first down, like that type of stuff. So, look, and if he has the prerequisite athleticism, and they believe that, that's one more check for him. So, look, they're gonna have to make a decision on this, and I think that there's a very realistic world that they don't take Michael Penix, but it's something that it's worth discussing right now as we go through it.
So running is important in the modern NFL. I'm not at all discounting that value of a quarterback who's mobile enough to pick up first downs with their legs and be a true dual threat. I'm not discounting that at all. That's a real thing. The guys who can do it well with their arm and with their legs are really tough to game plan against, and they threaten the defense. But at the end of the day, this is a passing league, and the teams that do best are the ones that produce explosive pass plays. You got to go back to his production. Like you mentioned, 7.6% pressure to sack rate, one of the best in the country. You want him under 20%, this guy's under 10% consistently. What does that mean? Drives don't die because of him. Okay, that's important because what have we been watching for 5 years? Our quarterback takes an inordinate amount of sacks, and there's a segment of the fan base that thinks it's all because of the offensive line. And nobody's going to argue that the offensive line is good. It's been bad. But he couldn't sense a freight train coming at him at 100 miles an hour from 100 yards away. The guy has no sense of pressure, and he takes a ton of sacks. Michael Penix Jr. has an innate sense to escape pressure. Sacks destroy drives. Sacks take away points. He does not take sacks. Not much at all. Number 2, turnovers take away points, right? He had a 2% turnover-worthy play rate. That's really good. It was 14th best in college football. Okay? Now, you may say, oh, maybe he's conservative. No. His big-time throw rate, 7.3%, 13th best in college football. So he's producing big-time plays, explosive plays, NFL throws, not taking sacks, not turning the ball over. Take away all your prejudice just for a second and focus on those 3 things. That is a quarterback that does not hurt your team, and if anything, produces explosive pass plays which equal points. He will put up points in the NFL. Now, is he going to be the perfect prototype? No, probably not. Like you said, there's some limitations. He is older. There's always the injury thing looming over his head. But with a good design of an offense, with a good offensive play caller, I think Michael Penix Jr. is a Pro Bowler, and I think he's a regular Pro Bowler. I don't think he's like a once in a while guy. I know some people think he's going to be a backup quarterback. I disagree. I think a properly designed offense around this guy, and he's going to put up Pro Bowl statistics. And I think he has shown all the requisite tools you want in a modern passing offense. So while I agree with you, I mean, it's hard for me to place him, right? He could be in the top 10. He could be on day 2. And that's for a lot of other reasons. But when it comes to the player himself, there is nothing about his production or his tape that should give you too much cause about taking him. He looks like a franchise quarterback to me, and I would take him at 6 if that's what I'm faced with.
Yep. I mean, you're a big Michael Penix supporter, and I would expect nothing less. I'll say to your point about the pressure to sacks, part of it, that you talk about stats that, like, especially these analytics that, like, translate and are sticky from year to year from college to the NFL. That's one of them. That you can see it where it's been consistent over his 6 years, and you can look at guys like, the top of the top in the NFL, like a Joe Burrow who who'd had it well in college, and then you look at a guy like Daniel Jones. Look at a guy like Tommy DeVito. It's like 2 guys who are absolutely awful pressure to sack rates in college, and guess what? Very similar pressure to sack rates in the NFL. So, yes, our offensive line is bad. There
He
is a
helps it.
reason. Yeah, there's a reason why we had the second most sacks in NFL history, and
Right.
it's because there's 2 parts to this.
By the
So,
way, I think it's
go
worth
ahead.
reviewing his stats for just one more thing. I apologize, but I
No,
want
go
to
for
go
it.
into this. I want to slam these points home to destroy a lot of bad ideas out there about who this guy is. Because this is updated from when we did our QB episode when he was our QB5 when Shador Sanders was in the class, and I think our rankings have largely stayed similar, other than Jaden Daniels coming in and replacing Shador Sanders' spot essentially, although not in our rankings, but in terms of the board. Passing grade overall 2023 90.5, top probably top 5th percentile, top 95th percentile. Intermediate passing grade 90.9, deep passing grade 93.5, no pressure grade 92.2, all top tier. Pressure grade, people say he struggles under pressure. His pressure grade 65.3, that's like top 10 percentile, something like that, top 10 15 percentile. His average depth of target is 10.7 yards. This is despite pressures. Jaden Daniels gets a lot of love because of the deep ball, right? He's supposedly the best deep ball thrower, right, in the class. And I think this year he put that on display in many ways with the receivers he has. Michael Penix Jr. had 1,787 deep yards, number 1 in college football this year. You're going to run out of excuses for why he's not a first-round quarterback when you dig into the tape, you dig into the production, and these metrics that predict NFL success. How many excuses are people going to come up with to say this guy's not a first-round quarterback? Because I personally think that the majority of people who hold on to that view like it's a religion are holding on to it because mock drafts tell them it's okay. And I'm telling you folks right now, those mock drafts are about to change. You already saw Jeremiah shift. Wait till watch the rest of them shift. A bunch of them are about to.
False. When you see a guy like Daniel Jeremiah do it, when you see a guy like Dane Brugler do it, other mock drafts tend to follow after that.
So that's our game theory for the pick 6, I think, right? I mean, I think you and I are on the same page here. Take your quarterback. You cannot go into the season with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock.
But I will say, the other part of this, I think it's worth, and you kind of have to go over, is there is a world that maybe just they're not comfortable with the medicals. That's a realistic situation, and it's shitty, and it would suck, and it's not ideal. But it's
then he's off your
something I
board.
think we have to acknowledge.
Then he's off your board. That's a different discussion.
So what do you do at 6?
Yeah. So if I guess this is the next proposition. You get to 6, Penix is there, you like him, but he's off your board because of medicals. I have a hard time believing that he's off your board for football reasons. I really have a hard time believing that, He's off your board for medical reasons. What do
So
you do
let's
at
say
6?
medical for argument's sake.
At this point, you have two choices. You take a blue chip receiver, right? Please don't take a tackle.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ignore that conversation tonight. You take a blue chip receiver, or you trade down to somebody who wants a blue chip receiver. And in that scenario, I'm I don't know who would want to trade up. I'm thinking about who's down there, but the team that comes to mind, a team that's a team ready to compete right now, that wants to add an impact receiver and is willing to give up assets to you. Is it the Titans at 7? Probably not. They just paid Calvin Ridley. They have D Hop. They still have Treylon Burks for what it's worth on their roster. At 8, that's a possibility. You got the Falcons. That's a possibility. They may want to add a playmaker to Kirk Cousins, but they may not want to trade from there because, in theory at least, there's still 2 receivers on the board. For this exercise, let's assume that the Chargers took Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5. Okay, because in this world, the 4 quarterbacks went 1, 2, 3, 4. Harrison Jr. went 5. I don't think they would pass up on MHA at 5. Giants are sitting at 6. You could trade with the Falcons, maybe. I think that's a possibility. But I think the team that would want to trade with you the most in this world, it could be the Bears. I think they would consider it, but do they have much to offer right now? I don't think so. Right? They don't have a second round pick. I'd want a second round pick. The New York Jets are drafting 10th. I don't even know if they have their second round pick this year. I think they do.
Don't.
They don't.
Nope.
Okay. So that's tough. How far are you willing to go down?
I'll say this. That doesn't matter to me because there is 0 chance I'm trading out of this pick without a first round pick next year. No chance.
Okay.
For me, the way I look at it is if I'm trading out of this pick, I'm not trading down to get a quarterback because that makes no fucking sense. You're not trading down. You're just taking your quarterback in that sense. No team trades down to go get their quarterback. You might want to argue coming back up from 47 or something like that, but you don't trade down for your quarterback. So you're trading down. You're taking another position player. In my mind, in that case, you want to get a first for next year. So you are in position because you struck out and you don't want to be in position where you're losing a bidding war for your quarterback again. So you go ahead and you trade down for a future first. And that's where I stand with it. And I don't even know. I still might just stick and take a wide receiver. Just eat it. And it's going to be a shitty situation either way if you're not coming in with a quarterback, and just take the blue chip wide receiver and roll into next year. And we're going to have a crappy season anyway. But I don't know. What do you see? Because I let's say the Jets and the Bears are offering you a future first. Each one are offering you a future first. What says you?
Bears are 9, Jets are 10. You want it from the team that you think is going to be worse in 2024. Man, the Jets did a lot to address their needs in the free agency this year. Rodgers is back, and even if Rodgers goes completely batshit crazy and decides to run for vice president with Robert Kennedy, and leave the Jets, like, you still have Tyrod Taylor. And this is a very different quarterback room than last year when they were stuck with Zach Wilson and whoever else they were rolling out there. Trevor Siemian, I think, right? For a while. I mean, and they still won 7 games with that, didn't they? Mm-hmm. So the Jets are winning 9, 10 games, in my opinion, like any way you slice it, like at minimum. I really feel like that defense is so good. I think that offense, especially if they trade with you, you're giving them a top receiver in this class. It's hard to imagine that team being bad. So you're probably at best getting a team that just missed the playoffs with a first round pick in the mid teams. Most likely you're getting a pick in the 20s next year.
Yeah.
So assign value to that. Will the Bears make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback? I don't care. As good as Caleb Williams is, I'm probably making that trade. I think I love Caleb. I would always bet on the rookie quarterback to struggle. I don't care who it is. I'd make that bet over Aaron Rodgers. So I would make the trade with the Bears at 9, and I would take their first next year and whatever they can give me this year. Yeah.
And that's what you would do?
Yep.
You think you would
What about
pull it?
you?
Probably, I would consider it. I would definitely, if the ultimate move is that you're like, I need to get a quarterback next year. I'm done playing these games. I'm setting myself up as best as I can. And there's still gonna be somebody really good available at especially if if it's the ninth pick. I don't even know if the Bears would do that because they very well might just get Roma Dunze by waiting. But regardless, this was something I was thinking about today. If these wide receivers are everything they're cracked up to be, and they end up being like top 10 wide receivers in this league, like we think they can be. And obviously, you have no way of knowing, but these are special, special prospects. Think of what these wide receivers go for, like at the end of their contract. You could trade
Yeah.
like a top 10 wide receiver for 2 first-round picks at the end of their contract after you
Right.
suck away all their value. To me, like, look, the difference between quarterback and the next thing is gigantic, but it's moving up there where wide receiver is starting to be like the top of the value based off what they're being paid, the impact they're bringing, all those things together. I'd have a hard time passing on one of these wide receivers. It's not gonna I mean, look, regardless, if you're not taking a quarterback, it sucks. We're basically throwing this season down the toilet. Where your hopes for the season is like you're hoping for the offseason to come. That's what you're hoping for. And you're hoping that these guys can show you enough promise that you feel confident in them going to next year and they're not just fired and we're starting this thing all over again. But realistically, that's the way it probably goes. It's not something I want to think about because it's just like it's not a fun thought. But at the end of the day, I I think I would just take the wide receiver, say that I'm in this position. I'm going to capitalize with a blue chip wide receiver. Go get my quarterback next year, and I'll figure it out because I don't think it's going to be a crazy class of the bidding war anyway.
Yeah. So to be clear, I wouldn't. I thought you were asking, would I make the trade with
Okay,
either the Bears or the Jets? And in that scenario, I would choose the Bears,
gotcha.
just because I'd be willing to bet the Bears have a worse year than the Jets, record wise. Um, but I'm with you. If I'm in a situation where I've missed on the top four quarterbacks and Penix is off my board for whatever reason, whether probably medical, I would imagine,
Mhm.
and I got no avenue to get a quarterback in the first round, I'm not considering it. Chances are in that scenario, one, two, three, four were quarterback. Five was probably Marvin Harrison Jr. Most likely, most
Mhm.
likely. Probably just drafting Malik Neighbors at six and moving on.
Yep.
I think that's the safest pick you can make. It's a high caliber player. Um, or you could say Roma Dunze. I prefer Neighbors, but that's fine. Like whatever.
Whatever.
Either one of those receivers, move on, and you just keep pushing, and you do the best you can to build a good roster, and then you're taking the approach of we are going to have to assemble this whole team, and then hope for the best, right? What will happen if you don't do that? If you do trade down, and I agree with you, if you don't get the quarterback and you're trading out of a blue chip prospect, is you're going to recreate 2021 all over again. In 2021, the
Yeah.
Giants in a quarterback heavy class, not that they were looking at quarterback, but they were sitting there and there was a quarterback to trade, Justin Fields, ironically, and they traded him because they didn't get their blue chip prospect. Who went one? They wanted Devonta Smith. The Eagles obviously jumped them with the Cowboys, but on the board were two blue chip prospects: Rashawn
Mhm.
Slater, All Pro left tackle Rashawn Slater,
Mhm.
and Micah Parsons were on
Mhm.
the board. And it's no mystery that those guys end up being all pros at the NFL level. They were supposed to be all pros.
Yeah.
They were on the board. The Giants, a team without talent, said, "No, we don't want them. Let's make some trades, and we can use that first next year." Without any foresight into what next year looked like, which most people had looked. They didn't think it was a great class from a quarterback perspective. Sam Howell was supposed to be good, ended up not being good, but for the most part, it wasn't supposed to be a good class. Dave Gettleman didn't care. If you recall the history of that night, Dave Gettleman was being criticized going into that draft as a guy who never trades down, and he traded down like three times in that
Mhm.
in that class. I'm convinced that idiot walked into that draft class and said, "Let me show them something,"
Yep.
and ignored everything else.
Yeah, what do you mean I'm getting all these calls about a trade up for a quarterback? Maybe something because just like this year, teams feel like it's their last chance to capitalize in a good quarterback class, and which didn't end up being that good, but was good at the time, and going on to a class that was not looking good next year. Like you said, I very similar, and like you said, it's you know a lot of as much as I was a fan of that trade. I thought it was a good trade. If you take a guy like Christian Darrisaw, we're looking at this trade totally different. They didn't. They took Kadarius Toney, but the other side of it is just taking the blue chip when it's there. And
You left Micah Parsons and Rashawn Slater on the board
yep, and
when you needed both of them. And granted, Micah Parsons was technically viewed as an off-ball linebacker, and he hadn't played, the year going into the draft because it was a COVID. It was the original year of COVID. Um, all that said, everybody had known that Micah Parsons had freakish ability. He was getting comped to Ray Lewis. Like, this was
yeah,
a freakish difference maker on defense. One any way you sliced it. So a freakish difference maker on defense, and a guy who was going to be a massive, massive, massive upgrade to your really bad offensive line. Keep in mind, within 2 months of that decision, the Giants were starting Nate Solder at right tackle.
yep,
Okay,
yeah,
and they passed on Rashawn Slater and later Christian Darrisaw. So again, if you pass on the blue chipper, it will have reverberating effect on your team for years to come. If you do it at the wrong spot, right? If you do it for a quarterback, I will never blame you. If you believe in the quarterback, take him. But for other reasons, man, it takes a lot to come off a blue chip prospect, in my opinion. You have to be a rich team to make that decision. So I'm probably not trading. I'm pulling the
yeah.
trigger and taking Neighbors or Dinze and moving on.
Yep, especially, me as a Giants fan. I mean, it might be different for, Joe Shane and Brian Dable, who maybe have to sell some sort of, we're going to get a quarterback next year, John Mara, and maybe there's something there. But me as a fan, I'd be like, if you didn't get us a quarterback, get me a blue chipper, and you can try to survive the year and hope. I'm rooting for you, but I don't have a lot of hope for you, type of thing. And we move, and I'll be happy for Malik Neighbor. I'll be happy to have Malik Neighbors, but I think Malik Neighbors is probably going to be better used, end up used by a guy like Ben Johnson or something like that if you go that route. So I don't know, man. It's a bleak scenario. You can still look into maybe Michael Penix falls because of injuries. He's everybody's injuries. Something, and you can be like, maybe the second round you're more confident. Maybe you do a move for Bo Nix, but again, if you had Michael Penix flag that much for injuries and all the other teams fall in the second round, feeling a lot less optimistic at that point. You have Bo Nix. I don't feel like he's a great fit for this team. And you're seeing him drop on a lot of teams, a lot of in the media of what people are saying about him. Like we heard a lot of people were calling him a backup at the combine. You hear Lance Zierlein, one of his biggest fans, is saying was I thought I thought he had a huge arm. Saw him in person. I don't think that anymore. And so there is I still, I still a lot I like about Bonex. I still think he could do well in the right system. I don't think we are that system though. So things are bleak if you go that route. So but yeah, man. I mean, we talked a little bit of trade down there and stuff like that. So I think that's a lot of the game theory at 6.
I think, yeah. So I think that kind of covers every scenario, right? Like we covered the trade up scenario at 3, trade up to 4. We didn't discuss 5. The reason we didn't discuss 5 was I don't think we can get to 5. I know that sounds crazy, uh, but I think that if the Chargers are trading down from 5, they're going to take the haul, and we're not going to give it to them. In all likelihood, I don't think we will. So that's why I didn't discuss it. We discussed the stay at 6, what we would do. At the end of the
Probably have to
day,
pay a
if
second either way if you're going up to 4 or 5 because they're going to get
exactly
to offer those two first.
right, and if they're fine with just taking a second to move down one spot, great, take it.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, I think that's probably unlikely. I think the match is at 4. So to me, the trade up scenarios are you have your eyes set on a specific player and you're willing to sort of empty out, the draft picks to get to 3, which I'm fine with if you really truly believe in a guy, like really, really believe in a guy. Like this is my guy. To 4, I'm comfortable like doing a stare down, with Monty Austin for it and saying we're a perfect match. Don't play games here. let's make this trade work, but I will make it work. Like, I'll figure it out, but you're not going to swindle me because he doesn't want to leave you. He wants to make the trade with you. We talked about, the panics at 6 versus if he's off your board, what you do. And then obviously the trade down scenarios. I think we did a pretty decent job game theorying this out and how it could play out on the board. Obviously, what we didn't account for are other external variables, which can change the algorithm, right? If somebody else trades up, for example, that who knows for whatever reason. If somebody trades down, like if the Bears throw a monkey wrench into this and they trade down a couple of picks, like you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But assuming the top 3 stay about the same, these are the kind of algorithmic pathways we see potentially playing out. And I hope Joe Shane, obviously, I'm assuming they do this kind of stuff. I'm sure they game theory this out ahead of time and they plan this stuff out. That's got to be part of the job. So I think I personally thought that was a pretty cool part of the episode. But you got a question up there.
Yeah, I put up a question because we didn't go into this too much. I thought it was just a good last thing to hit on. Kareem asks, "What are the top QBs in next year's draft if we don't get this one this year?" Which is, if it goes that route, something we have to think about. So, just to name a few. I mean, I think the number one clear guy is Shedeur Sanders. I think if he came out this year, I think there's a good chance he could have been a top 10 pick. Maybe not because he had a back injury at the end of the year there,
which will affect him next year too.
Yep. So we can talk about that a little bit and that, but you have Carson Beck, who I think I don't know about I feel like he's almost kind of like where JJ was this time last year, except he's a year older. Like as far as his draft stock, he's probably going to be sitting somewhere in the 20s going into the year, probably. And then you have Quinn Ewers, who's the upside guy. You have Jackson Dart, who's a really
Cam Ward.
Yeah, Jackson Dart and Cam Ward kind of like clear day 2 guys right now. Really need big jumps to get up. Trying to think if there's anybody. I mean, there's a bunch of mid-level. There's the DJ Ukulele or whatever how we say his name is.
Cade Klubnik. There's a bunch of these guys.
Yeah.
So in terms of first round talents, I think right now you're looking at probably 2 guys.
And Drew Aller.
Drew Aller. Well, yeah. So 2 guys. Drew Aller was awful this year. I don't know. I mean, a tremendous prospect coming out of high school, but looked really bad this year. So his first year. So I'm cutting him slack, but I can't put him on that list right now. I didn't see enough from Drew Aller to make me think this guy's going to take a leap into being a first round talent this year. That would be a hell of a leap.
He's just the only young guy, the only underclassman who has a shot to do that.
He's the only one. That's true.
Or at least showed a chance of that. Other guys could do it.
Right now, you probably have 2 guys that look like they're probably fairly certain to go in the first round, and that's Shedeur Sanders and Carson Beck. And let me tell you something. That ain't Caleb Williams, Drake May. That's a big drop off. Shedeur is a very good player, but he might be maybe QB3, QB4 in this class. Maybe could be QB5. He got hurt. His back got injured toward the end of the season. We don't know the status of that. He takes a beating back there, although they increase the quality of their own line through the transfer portal. So we'll see how that plays out next year. But if Shedeur is good, he's going 1 overall. It's not even a question. If he's good, he's probably going number 1 overall next year. And if he's not good, he could fall. His stock could fall. And then what have you got? So
look at Sam Howell.
Listen. Guys come up. You can't predict the future. Some guys emerge, and you never know. There's somebody out there. It's the kid who took over for Caleb in the bowl game at USC. He looked pretty good in the bowl game.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting his name, but guys emerge, right? And they show up and they look like, wow, that's an NFL player. But barring more information, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a whole lot of maybes and not anywhere near the quality of this class. Where we just gave you 4 firmly entrenched top 10 picks and potentially a 5th one, really valuable quarterbacks. That's nothing like next year on paper, at least right now. So unfortunately, I wouldn't bank on it. I know people say wait for it. I think that's a bad bet. I literally think that's not taking your quarterback in 2018 and then reaching in 2021. Miller Moss. Thank you, Jabri. Miller Moss was the USC quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, before I forget, everybody follow all our friends on their social media platforms. So that's BBU Giants, It's Jabri. He's got a huge IG following. Follow him there. If you want to talk to him about how much you love Daniel Jones, definitely add him on Twitter. He will have multiple, like, prolonged quote tweet conversations with you for hours and hours into the night. He enjoys good banter. Um, Before our friend Ashton was here, the Get Back, upcoming young journalist, follow him. The Get Back on YouTube. Um, Authentic has been in here before. Definitely follow Authentic. Authentic in the Beard. Who am I missing?
My former co-host Sarge,
Oh, Sarge is
Sergeant
here.
Mayhem.
Sarge is here. Big Blue Beards. And who else are we talking about?
Got Momo.
Anybody? Yeah. Well, if you don't know who Momo is, you're not on Twitter. Follow Momo for sure.
K-Mac.
Yeah, K Mac's a good
T.
dude. Always around. Of course, our buddies 1T, our friends are here. So a lot of these guys do have their own pages, their own pods. Please follow them. You know, they're good. They're good dudes, and they know their stuff. I'm sorry.
Chris
So,
Peace. Yeah, I'm
Chris
sure there's
Peace.
some people we're not even
Yeah.
recognizing your Twitter handle from your YouTube name, but thank you guys for all the support, and definitely drop your ats for each other and make sure you follow each other and all
Yeah, put
that.
your ads. Everybody who we just mentioned, please put a link in the chat for your pods or your ats on Twitter. So when people go back and look at this, they can see it. All right. Oh, by the way, I have to give a shout out. One last shout out to Jabri. Um, He's a Giant was a name that came out from discussions with you and me. It's something that I think we subconsciously stole from Jabri, because in Jabri's philosophy, you're everybody's a giant until they're not a giant. Like J.C. Horn, draft night, giant, right? Uh, Shadur Sanders, giant. Caleb Williams, giant. Like they're until they're not a giant, he's a giant. So we have to give our royalty rights. I told him we wouldn't give him royalties, but what I told him we would do is on certainly at least on one of our posters, we're gonna have his profile pic pointing to the "he's a giant" thing.
I like it.
The MLK with the yellow do rag, like pointing at the "he's a giant." So
We'll
we'll
work
do
on it.
that. Can we do that? Yeah. So shout out to Jabri. All right, I'm sorry. Just wanted to give a shout out to all of our
No,
friends
you're
here.
good.
So all
I
right,
love it. Everybody's here, always supporting us. Definitely, good shout out.
all right. What else we got?
Do you want to dive into the quarterback prospect madness stuff, or you got
Yeah,
anything else?
it's early. It's only an hour and a half in. We got plenty of time.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
so let's do the you worked hard on this thing. Why don't you introduce our quarterback madness thing and we'll go from there.
Sure. So something I put together for fun. I went ahead and I took every single first round quarterback from 2004, for everyone knows when Eli Manning got drafted, to today. And I seeded them by draft order. So put like the first and second seeds with the first and second, third for a lot of those. So first, second, third, fourth seeds. And then, like Lamar Jackson was a 16 seed because he was drafted 32nd. So, and then I put them all in the bracket and, set them out. So, hang on. I have this. I did the one where that's already on Twitter. Let me pull up the other one, which was our previous, just a blank one. But essentially, we can just go through this, and people in the chat feel free to chime in if you have any takes on it. And we can always go back and change it. But I'll get your opinion on Sal, and we'll just go through. The idea is you're supposed to, you know, rank them as prospects. So how you saw these guys as prospects, you can also, change how you might view a quarterback now compared to what you do it then, how you look at quarterbacks. Like, for example, you might look at Patrick Mahomes in a higher light just because you didn't value those types of quarterbacks then, but you do now. That's fine. But just purely as prospects, nothing with their NFL success. So that's the idea. First one here, I think Andrew Luck versus Paxton Lynch. And any objections to Andrew Luck? Mark Sanchez and Daniel Jones. What do we think there?
Is this really is this a thing? What was the final score on that one?
That one was like 70% Mark Sanchez or something. Mark Sanchez is pretty good.
That
There
sounds right.
he was a good prospect. He was a butt fumble idiot in the NFL, but he was much better than Daniel Jones.
as a USC prospect coming out, the Sanchez was legit. Like he
Yeah.
wasn't. He was a lot better than Jones as a prospect. So we're talking about just as prospects. So
Yep.
yeah, Sanchez easy. He clears. Yeah,
Sam Bradford over Freeman. We feel good about that.
absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right. This first round will be pretty easy, so I'm just going to keep it going. Let me know if you have any objections as we're doing this, and everybody in the chat too. Alex Smith versus Sean Watson. That could be an interesting. You
That's
you were that's more your day than mine. So you give me this.
it's call me old. Uh, that's a tough. Alex Smith is a really, really good prospect coming out of college, man. He was very good coming out of Utah. Like the kid was a good football player. So I mean, he went one overall.
Yeah.
The lead up in that draft for months was Alex Smith versus Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they took the wrong guy, but you know, there was a lot of love for Alex Smith because he played the game a really, in a kind of he's a dual threat. He had a good arm, and he could do it all. And he was viewed as a very intelligent player. Like I mean, I thought he went to a bad situation, but I think he was a better prospect than Watson, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it. I mean, Watson, I definitely think got underrated and didn't get enough love. National champion. He win the Heisman?
I think he did. Yeah. Let
Yeah,
me
at
look
least
it up.
was in the ceremony.
Yeah.
Also, thank you, Sarge. I forgot to show it again, so thank you for calling that out. But but yeah, so yeah, I'm with you. If anybody else says anything else, call it out. But I think Alex Smith is fair. Do think that's a close one. I do think Sean Watson won that one.
I mean, I
And
think people are going to vote on who's the better player, which I understand.
yeah,
Obviously, Deshaun Watson clears Alex Smith, um, but again, he was. I mean, I know we have a younger crew. Like, not a lot of us are old enough to remember that, but Deshaun. I mean, Alex Smith was legit. So as a prospect,
here's one, and it's Mitch Trubisky versus Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes won. And I'll say I'll go Patrick Mahomes because in real time I called Patrick Mahomes my QB1. I loved Patrick Mahomes in that draft.
yeah.
Where were you at the time?
No, I agree. I wasn't a Trubisky guy at all. I was a Patrick
Yeah,
Mahomes guy. By the way, he did not. Watson did not win the
that's
Heisman.
what I
It was
thought.
that
I
was it
felt
was
he should
it was yeah, it was Lamar in 16, Baker Mayfield in 17.
All right, we have Robert Griffin versus Joe Flacco. I think that's probably Robert Griffin pretty easily, huh?
Yes, sir.
I mean, Joe Flacco was a solid prospect and all, but RG3 was special.
Very special.
Matt Ryan versus Ryan Tannehill.
I would think Matt Ryan should win this pretty easily as a prospect.
Yeah, I would say so as well. This one was a blowout. This one was 100% win. Matthew Stafford versus JP Lossman.
I'm surprised you put that up. Yeah, that's obvious. All right, next one.
All right. Caleb Williams versus Lamar Jackson.
That's actually tougher than people think, but still, Caleb clears.
Yeah, I thought that one was one that maybe you get like a crazy 1 versus 16 upset because Lamar Jackson definitely, especially now, would be looked at. I mean, I think he's a better prospect, like looking back at it, than Jaden Daniels is, and Jaden Daniels is gonna go top 3. So, but yeah, it's Caleb Williams. This one I really like. This one I tried to like strategically make some of these happen based if the seeding was close. Anthony Richardson versus Lamar Jackson, 8th versus 9th
Ooh.
seed. That's a good one.
Didn't we just do Lamar Jackson?
Oh, sorry. You're right. Anthony Richardson versus Josh Allen. I apologize.
Okay. This is a good one because you could make an argument Anthony Richardson isn't even viewed as a top prospect without Josh Allen.
Yep. A
I
lot of it was because of Josh Allen. People in the chat, please chime in on this one. This one's
It's a tough one. I'm going to vote Richardson on this. I think it's close. The reason I'll say Richardson is I think Richardson actually showed more as a passer in his 1 year starting than Josh Allen did. He was a more advanced passer than Allen. People criticize him. I thought he was a very advanced passer by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So things that Richardson did well. His pressure to sack rate, I love talking about that stat. It was one of the best in college football. He did not end drives. He didn't. I mean, he had his fair share of turnover-worthy plays, but it wasn't exorbitant. He didn't take sacks. And as you watched him throughout the year, his ability to diagnose and dissect zone became better and better and better. And he was using his natural arm talent to destroy teams. So his trajectory was ridiculous last year as a prospect. You know, what you saw from game to game to game, it's very rare to see that. I think he was a better prospect than Josh Allen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's close, it's a good one, but I agree, I think he had really good pocket presence, and I think ultimately when you're comparing which with you were at those guys was the 2 physical specimens, I mean, Josh Allen has a little bit of a bigger arm, but Anthony Richardson was the physical specimen of all specimens from an athlete standpoint, so, yeah, it's close, but I agree with you. I think, we got a lot of people in the chat, it's pretty split, but I'm gonna go let's go Anthony Richardson here.
Okay, next one.
Baker Mayfield versus Kenny Pickett.
That's
Baker, right?
Baker. Yep, that's
Yep.
quick.
Jamarcus Russell versus Mac Jones.
It's Jamarcus.
Jamarcus Russell, even though he's a big dummy.
He was drinking his purple drink, but before
Yeah,
that, he was a top prospect.
not the good type of big dummy.
Yeah, yeah.
This one was literally 50-50. It was a 50% to 50%. I had to be the tiebreaker on this because I wasn't allowed to vote. JJ McCarthy versus Jay Cutler, 6'11" seed. I actually thought that one was an interesting one because you can see some comparison between the guys. Decent athletes, big arms.
I got to tell you, Jay Cutler was him coming out of Vanderbilt.
Hmm.
He really was a stud coming out of school. A big, huge, live arm, very productive. Um, I'm probably going to vote for Cutler on this one because he was a very good prospect. What did you
All
think?
right. I mean, look, I was not diving in deeply in Cutler. I love Cutler as an NFL player. Smoking Jay.
Mm-hmm.
But we have some Cutlers in the chat here. Your Cutler. I'll defer to you guys, and I'll go Jay Cutler because I did think that
Yeah,
was a close one.
it
And
was. It's close, but Cutler just was so he was pretty incredible.
this one I thought was closer than it should have been. Jaden Daniels versus Brady Quinn.
Oh, that should be Jaden Daniels easily.
Yeah. Jaden Brady Quinn was, he was muscular, all that, but he wasn't a special prospect. He was just all potential. This one went the opposite way as me because I'm going to what I had in real time. Sam Darnold versus Josh Rosen.
I would have picked Josh Rosen in
I
real
picked
time.
Josh. I picked Josh Rosen. Granted, my opinion has shifted a little bit over time because where I do like guys that can move a little bit more, and Josh Rosen busting was part of the reasons why I started to stray away from guys like this. With that said, I really thought Josh Rosen was him. I was all in on Josh Rosen, and I never really saw it with Sam Darnold. My take with Sam Darnold always
Everybody,
was,
yeah, everybody else is voting Darnold.
hey, they
Yeah,
he did win it, so that makes sense. And I'll go with the chat because it's gonna be the chat's thing. But my take at the time was that you know I trust the evaluators, I trust the professionals that are saying they like Sam Darnold, and if that's what the Giants do, cool with me. But my guy was Josh Rosen. But yeah, there's a lot of people like Darnold. Hey, yeah, a lot of Darnold. Darnold not even
put in
close.
Darnold.
Got Darnold. All right, Drake May versus Jason Campbell.
Drake May.
Yeah. All right. Back up to the other 32. Trevor Lawrence versus Teddy
Trevor
Bridgewater.
Lawrence. Yeah.
Not even close. I think that was 100% as well.
Mm-hmm.
This one I really like too. Two Chargers guys. Philip Rivers versus Justin Herbert.
Herbert.
Anybody in the chat want to chime in? I do think I agree. I think, Philip Rivers, he was I know he got drafted second, but a lot of people had him
Fourth.
from what
He got
from
drafted.
I saw like third to fourth.
Fourth.
Mhm. And Herbert's he's the prototype. So let's go Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray versus Dwayne Haskins. Kyler Murray,
Either.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. CJ Stroud versus Ben Roethlisberger.
Ah. Probably CJ Stroud. As a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
As a prospect, I think CJ Stroud was a more accomplished prospect coming out than Ben was.
Yeah, I agree. Go CJ Stroud. If anybody has any objection, feel free to throw them up. But I agree. And this is one at the time. Would you have time, Zach Wilson or Justin Fields?
Justin Fields
I had Zach
in real
Wilson.
time.
I had Zach Wilson in real time. They both stunk.
Yeah.
I was worried about Justin Fields processing, which was an issue, but Zach Wilson was also just a loser, so that was an issue
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, it seems like we got a lot of Fields, so let's go Justin Fields. Um, Bryce Young versus Johnny Manziel. This one was surprisingly close.
Shouldn't be.
No, it
Bryce
shouldn't be,
Young. Yeah,
but
Bryce Young. Yeah.
it's Bryce Young. But
Yeah.
I love Johnny Manziel. I wouldn't consider voting for him, but I do love him. He's like one of my all time favorite college football players. I wish the NIL was around during his time because it would have made college football so much more fun. He was a freshman sensation when I was a freshman in college. So just awesome memories of him. Trey Lance versus Matt Leinart. This was a close one as well.
Are we doing on traits or actual football?
Everything. Just how you would evaluate him as a prospect.
Leinart.
Yeah. I'm at Leinart as well. I love Trey Lance. I was a big I had him over Wilson and Fields. He was my two. Still think he got a raw deal, but yeah, I think Matt Leinart. He had the pedigree. And he had traits too. He wasn't Trey Lance, but he had traits.
Yeah, he can move a little bit.
I was happy to see Eli Manning swept this one pretty hard, but I was a little worried he wouldn't. Eli Manning versus Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, no. As prospects, that's not comparable.
Yeah, Eli Manning. I wasn't sure if people just like wouldn't read it and just do Aaron Rodgers, but
right.
Everybody read correctly. yes, Debris. I had Trey Lance by QB2, but they all sucked, so leave me alone. Joe Burrow versus Jordan Love. Joe Burrow, right?
Yep.
Blake Bortles versus Tua Tagovailoa. I think I go Tua, right?
Tua.
I know. Blake Bortles went high and all, but
there was never a tank for Bortles chant.
Yeah, it was really just like they liked their guy, so they went and got him. Jared Goff versus CJ Manuel. Goff. Yeah. Carson Wentz versus Christian Ponder. Carson Wentz, right?
Wentz, yep.
Those were two guys who got reached on heavy, so they're going against. Marcus Mariota versus Blaine Gabbert.
Mariota.
I agree. That one again wasn't really close for me, but I was curious. Jameis Winston versus Brandon Whedon. This was another 100% sweep.
Jabo.
Vince Young versus Jake Locker. That's
Young.
Vince Young pretty easily for me. Yep. And then I like this matchup, even though it's clear. Cam Newton versus Tim Tebow, former teammates.
Oh, come on.
Newton. Yeah. Cam
Newton.
I don't even know if Tim Tebow wins better college quarterback.
We pushing right to a champion tonight?
Yeah, fuck it. Let's push through.
All right.
We'll fly through this. All right. Andrew Luck versus Mark Sanchez. I think it's still pretty easily. It's going to get harder, but I think that one's easy. Sam Bradford versus Alex Smith. What do you guys think? You guys think? Yeah, I agree, Sam Bradford. Anybody have anything on that one? But I agree. Patrick Mahomes versus Robert Griffin. We do have a little bit of Smith and Bradford, but we can go back to it if you guys keep pushing. Looks like we're getting more Smith, so I can go back and change it. But yeah, let's change it. We got more. What do you think? Patrick Mahomes versus Robert Griffin.
Robert Griffin.
Yeah, I think it's got to be. And I loved Patrick Mahomes, but you got to go with Robert Griffin. RG3, it would have had a potential to be like that. Like he would, I think, would have looked more like that Joe Burrow like type, Cam Newton type level prospect if he was in one by himself. Even though
we're talking about prospects here, not what they became in the NFL.
Yeah. Matt Ryan versus Matthew Stafford. For me,
Oof.
it's pretty easily Matthew Stafford. I don't know, and
Yeah.
I love Matt Ryan, but Matthew Stafford is a guy that I seriously considered giving a 1 seed to. Him and Eli were too
He was
close to
very,
getting.
very, very, very special prospect coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we got mostly Stafford. He was he was a special prospect. Caleb Williams versus AR. Caleb, right?
Yes.
Um, Baker Mayfield versus Jamarcus Russell. 2 number
Jamarcus
one.
Russell, I would say.
I think I'd say Jamarcus Russell too. Oh, Nunu's here. What's up, Nunu? Um,
What's up? She's not gonna be happy about
Russ,
that answer.
Jamarcus Russell, Baker. We got a lot of Bakers.
Should we talk about
Anybody else?
this? So the
Anybody
reason
else?
again, we're talking about the prospect. The reason I
Yeah.
said Jamarcus Russell is because there was zero doubt about Jamarcus Russell being the top pick in the class, right? The
Yeah.
top quarterback in his class, like zero doubt. He was the cream of the crop, and he was a freak athlete, freak everything when he came out. Whereas Baker was outstanding, he won the Heisman, but it wasn't obvious that he was QB1 until sort of late in that process.
Yeah. It was
Very
really
late,
like the last couple days like that. He really
right?
come.
Yeah. So I would
Yeah.
say that overall, I think Jamarcus Russell was a better prospect. He ends up being a buffoon, but I think as a prospect he was probably better. But we'll go with whatever everybody here
Yeah.
says.
I agree. I'll just go with the chat, but I agree with you. I think the only thing you could say is that people probably should have had a better idea about the mental makeup when they got to meet with him to know that that would bust him because it seemed like it was way more obvious that it should have been obvious when they met with him because it was pretty clear to everybody else once he got to the league.
What's our chat saying on this one?
We got Jay Cutler versus Jaden Daniels. What do you guys think?
I think that's a pretty clear answer on this one.
I think I think Jaden Daniels. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what I would say. As a prospect.
Yeah. Anybody
Yeah.
on anybody have I saw Sarge as Jay Cutler. Anybody have anything else? Yeah, there we go. Jaden Daniels coming in. All right. Sam Darnold versus Drake May. For me,
Huh,
that's Drake May.
that's easy.
I'll let anybody else too. I know that people had Sam Darnold fans when he came out. Some people aren't as high end on Drake May. To me, that is easy. But what does the chat say? We got May. Anybody else here?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, Drake May. All right. All right. We got other side. Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Herbert. Um,
Lawrence.
for me, it's Trevor Lawrence. I'm gonna put it if anybody else has any objections. I could see people pushing back, and I know people like him, especially Giants fans, but I think Trevor Lawrence is one of those generational guys. Um, yeah, I thought Jabri might. I know Jabri was saying most polished, but yeah, mostly Lawrence here. Kyler Murray versus CJ Stroud. I think that's a really good one.
Is it? I think Kyler clears.
You think so? I mean, he had the question about height and
Won the
and
Heisman, had an all-time year.
mhm. Let's see. We got 2 Kylers, 3 Kylers, or no, and a Stroud, 4 Kyler. Okay, so we'll go Kyler. Kyler Murray. All right. Justin Fields versus Bryce Young. To me,
Oh,
that's
that's
Bryce Young.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions about Justin Fields processing that continued into the league. Anybody have Fields here or Bryce Young? All right. Got a few Bryce Youngs already. Okay. Matt Leinart versus Eli Manning. If anybody
Eli.
says Matt Leinart, you're kicked out of this chat. um Joe Burrow versus Tua Tagovailoa. I don't think
Joe
many
Burrow.
people was saying Tua except for the year before when Joe Burrow was like a 6th-round pick. Jared
Things
Goff versus
change.
Carson Wentz. Curious where you guys all stood on this at the time. I was Carson Wentz.
I was also Carson Wentz.
Curious, what do you guys have in the chats? Where you say Jared Goff versus Carson Wentz? Obviously, I prefer Goff now, but I was big on the tools at the time of Wentz. And I thought Jared Goff's like offense kind of just like he was a stat stuffer a little bit. This is
Split.
close. Off. 1, 2.
4-3 golf right
Yeah,
now.
I think we're going. Yeah, let's go Jared Goff then.
So,
All right.
yeah. All right. Fair enough. They're close.
Marcus Mariota versus Jameis Winston, another good one. Another one that was
I mean,
really.
they were in the same class.
Yep.
It's,
So just like the
I
last one is 1-2. Who'd you guys have?
I mean, I personally had Winston pretty cleanly above Mariota in that class.
Yeah, I had Winston. Yeah, we got Jameis. This is my take on it at the time. Was I'm like, if Jameis Winston's gonna bust, it's for, which really didn't stick, but I was like, was gonna be for off field issues, and I said if I don't know why it's not spacing. Whatever. If when if Mariota was, it was because it was on because it felt like he was never the guy in the big moments. But regardless, Vince Young versus Cam Newton. This is Cam Newton pretty easily
Yeah,
for me. As much as I thought Vince Young was a really great
it's a
quarterback.
good matchup, but I agree. Cam clears.
Yeah, if anybody wants, but yeah, wants to argue it, go ahead. But I'm gonna put Cam Newton for now. All right, Andrew Luck, Alex Smith. I think that's going to be Andrew Luck. Feel free to argue, but that's pretty easy. Robert Griffin versus Matthew Stafford. That's a good one. I'm going to take Stafford. What about you?
Stafford.
Really close. Robert Griffin would have, like I said, would have been number one in most classes, but I'm going to take Matthew Stafford. I think he was really close into being a 1 seed here. Yeah. All right. I think we got a couple Staffers off the rip here. So Matthew Stafford. Oh shit. We did get some RG3s. 1, 2. Anybody else? We have one more RG3. Okay. Never mind. Let's go RG3.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
And then Caleb Williams versus Baker Mayfield.
Caleb.
I don't know if anybody wants to argue, but I think it's Caleb pretty easily here. Jaden Daniels versus Drake May. We're having this argument right now. Put it in. That's Drake May for me. I know we got Jaden Daniel fans. Put your votes in. 2 Mays.
3-1, man. 3-2. 4-2. 5-2. Well, 4-2, really.
Oops, I did. Thank you, Jabri.
5-2. 6. Yeah, it's May. May wins.
All right. All right, May. All right. Trevor Lawrence versus Kyler Murray. I'm going to go T-Law.
I agree. T-Law was a better prospect.
Anybody have anybody else here? All right. Trevor Lawrence looks like it's ripping off the top. Okay. Bryce Young versus Eli Manning. Again, go ahead and you can kick you out of the chat.
it's definitely Eli, and Bryce is awesome, but
Yeah, I
it's
think
Eli.
I think Trevor Lawrence is the one that he's going to have tough time with, but maybe not in this group, but I think that's where I think it's fair to. I don't know why I'm not getting spaces occasionally, but that's okay. Joe Burrow versus Jared Goff. Is anyone arguing anything or Joe Burrow? I don't think so. Cam Newton versus Jameis Winston.
I think that's pretty clear also.
Yeah. Cam Newton?
Yeah.
As though like Jameis Winston was, a guy that people tanked for at one point in time. I think
he was, but Cam Newton was a better player in college.
Yeah, Cam Newton
and had more transitable traits. Yeah, he was an easier
now. Cam Newton versus Joe Burrow next round is gonna be awesome. Let's do it right now. Let's do it because that's a great one.
Cam versus Joe Burrow. Okay, let's hear your
opinion,
argument.
the two best college seasons I've ever seen. Joe Burrow, he had all the talent around him, and he did everything with it, broke every single record. But there was no NFL players in that team that that Cam Newton dragged to the national championship. He has all the tools. He's a prototype. I'm gonna go Cam, and we have a lot of Cams in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going Cam here.
Oh, we have a couple Burrows.
Yeah, I think Joe Burrow's season was the best I've ever seen. From any player ever in college football. But what Cam did was ungodly stuff. Like you'd never seen it
Carried
at that
them.
level. Yeah, carry them, unbelievable. It's Cam.
Yeah, there was no one. You can look up that team. I think Nick Fairley was the only NFL player they had on that team.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, we'll start back where we were. I just thought that was an interesting one. Andrew Luck versus RG3. We had this argument years ago. I think Andrew Luck was pretty much the consensus to everybody.
He wins.
Okay, and then another one from this one, Caleb Williams versus Drake May.
Caleb.
I think there was a little bit of argument during the season, but I think everyone's gone Caleb Williams at this point in time. Yep. All right, guys. Are you gonna keep the giant going? Trevor Lawrence or Eli Manning
As prospects.
as prospects?
Oh, that's tough. I don't want to say it.
I think Lawrence was the generational guy. I think Eli was just below it. I think Lawrence was more closer to Peyton than he was Eli. But
I think it's Lawrence.
Got like Eli Love though. Let's see if it's enough to put him through. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we got 1, 2, 3.
It's real. It's true, DK. The right answer.
I mean, now we were just voting twice. I think we had Eli by 1 there.
Then put in Eli.
Manning.
Yeah, screw Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence.
So we have our final 4 set, right?
Yep. We have Andrew Luck, Caleb Williams, Eli Manning, and Cam Newton.
Oof.
We had 2 number 1 seeds not make it. Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow.
Tough. That's tough. All right. Let's start with Luck versus Caleb Williams. I know what I'm going to vote, but I want to hear what people have to say.
Yeah. Let you guys start that out. What do you guys got? Andrew Luck versus Caleb Williams.
I won't, Nuno. I got you.
We got 2 Luck, 3 Lucks, 2 Calebs, 3 Calebs.
Yeah. So
4 Lucks.
Right. So the correct answer is what you guys are saying. Andrew Luck was a truly generational prospect. Like, as amazing as Caleb is, people always say Caleb is the best quarterback prospect since, and where they stop at, hard stop, is since Andrew Luck. There's a reason for that. Andrew Luck was better. So I think, you could make a case for Caleb, but I don't think a very strong one. Yeah. I think it's Andrew Luck.
Funny enough, I mean, we're not going to get the chance to get the argument. Not that I think Trevor Lawrence would have made it past Cam Newton anyway, but I've had arguments that I think you can make a case for Trevor Lawrence as a prospect over Andrew Luck, just for how good he was at a young age and things like that. And
he won the national title as a freshman. Yeah, I get it.
He was the best rated recruit ever. But as far as Andrew Luck versus Caleb Williams, this is where I come with it. I think somebody phrased it well. I think it was Rick Spielman, or the Vikings former GM is. And basically, maybe it wasn't him, it was somebody else, but basically that Caleb Williams is the most talented quarterback that we've possibly seen. Like, as far as a quarterback prospect, he's as talented, if not more talented than anyone's seen. But like, as far as when you're describing a prospect, he doesn't have the size that Andrew Luck has. He doesn't have like the floor that Andrew Luck had as a player. I think Andrew Luck was just the specimen, while Caleb Williams is like the upside guy. Well, like, he has a tremendous floor. It wasn't to the level that Andrew Luck had.
I agree. It's Andrew Luck.
And they still ruined him.
Yep.
All right.
Let's go to the other Final Four matchup.
All right. Eli Manning versus Cam Newton. Can we have Eli Manning win again, or are people going to give it to Cam Newton? This
this is
this one
rough.
this one
This
I
is
actually
easier.
this one I think no, this one I actually think is close for me. Like Cam Newton's great. He's the best college player ever seen, but like and he is like the specimen, but I don't know. Like I think they're
Look at the
pretty
votes.
close tiers. Like people didn't look at Cam Newton's generation. They looked at Trevor Lawrence's generational.
The votes are wild.
We got two Cams.
And
Eli's gonna win this shit.
yeah, put up Nuna's question, by the way.
Where was it? Okay. Genuine question. Do you think Caleb Williams has been overrated due to the success of Patrick Mahomes? Good question. I don't think he's overrated anymore because of Patrick Mahomes. I do think that like early in his career it happened, but I do think like Patrick Mahomes paved the way for Caleb Williams. If Caleb Williams would not get the love that he's getting today if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes. But I wouldn't necessarily call him overrated because of it. What would you say, Sal?
No, I don't think he's being overrated. I think he's really a special prospect. I just think that the comps to Mahomes are a bit much. I think they're a
I
little bit
agree.
much. I think that's asking a lot as a comp. If you're, I mean, then again, if we're comping prospects, I think he was a far better prospect than Patrick Mahomes was coming out. You know, Mahomes had a lot more to develop on. You know, and I think that Caleb is a better prospect, but like the comps to Mahomes, a player in the NFL, yeah, I don't agree with that too much. I think there's a lot more Aaron Rodgers in his game, than Patrick Mahomes. I think
Mhm.
there's a little bit of Kyler Murray in his game, um, but I can see the argument. Nunes saying I think he's been overrated even till this point in the draft process. No one talks about how badly he regressed this season, and they act like he's a perfect prospect. I agree with
That's
that
fair. That's fair.
because Drake May catches unusual amounts of slander. People pick apart his game and say, "Oh, look at his footwork here and look at that there," and they just destroy him. But he didn't really regress to the degree that Caleb did this year. Caleb really did
Yeah.
regress, and they don't pick him apart. And he had, we saw his film. There were some problems on his film. He misses layups. He doesn't see the middle of the field stuff too. Sometimes he's always looking for home runs. Stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's overrated. I think the prospect in terms of his talent and traits is just through the roof. So I personally don't think so, Nuno.
But I do see where she's come from. Where I do think his flaws are overlooked because of Caleb Williams or because of Patrick Mahomes. I will say that I do think we overlook flaws because we saw Patrick Mahomes work through these same things.
Yep.
And okay,
So Eli won, huh?
I think by like one or two, I think Eli might have got it.
So Eli knocked off Trevor Lawrence and Cam Newton for the pleasure of going toe to toe with Andrew Luck.
All right, guys, are we doing this again?
I'm vetoing this one, and you're
and
gonna force me to veto like the most painful veto ever.
Andrew
Andrew Luck versus
Eli Manning. You almost gotta do it like when you're cheating on a test, guys. You gotta like miss one on purpose. Not raise any red flags.
this is ridiculous.
All right, we got Sarge coming in, same one each time. Elijah Nelson Manning. What do we got? What do we got, guys? Eli Manning, Andrew Luck.
Oh my
Winner of the
goodness. 2-2.
2-2. We got to make sure to watch
3-2 Eli.
for people
Eli
voting again.
No, D-Kid does it back to back, so
I
that's
know.
pretty obvious.
You can't stop it.
Momo. Yeah. 3-3. Fred coming in from nowhere. Do you have any more votes?
Any more? 3-3.
We're gonna have to cast a tying vote here.
Yeah, if we don't get
The
it.
tiebreaker. They're gonna hate us for this.
5, 4, 3. People beat Brady twice.
Brett did not vote before. He voted for Luck there.
Okay, there we
And
go.
did,
And
did Chris
then
did Chris vote before?
let's See if Chris voted
No,
already.
he
He said
didn't. They're
Peyton. He
tied.
said Peyton. He said Peyton's little brother. Did we count
Yeah.
that?
Oh, well, I don't know. Did we? I didn't. So they're tied.
No, he didn't see it. Okay, they're tied again. All right.
So despite the like 8-point home field advantage that you guys have given Eli Manning, it's a tie. Guys, the answer is obviously Andrew Luck. This is ridiculous.
What if I call it Eli? Then we tie.
You know what? Fuck it. The show is called He's a Giant. Like whatever.
Eli Manning.
Eli
What?
Manning.
You know what? We made him this far. We're not gonna be able to trick anybody that we're not biased by how it's going so far. So fuck it. Eli Manning, greatest quarterback prospect to ever live. The better Manning.
You're goddamn right he is. Eli wins. That's what he does, right? He goes on a run against all odds. The underdog, and he goes and he plays perfect football when it counts.
And Andrew Luck, Momo. And Andrew
Luck. Yeah, it's over. Eli wins.
All right.
Eli always gets what he wants in the end. That's right, Chris.
We did 2 hours and 10 minutes going through all this, but it was fun.
All right. Well, I don't have the energy to wrap up everything we did. Everybody who stayed here and watched and paid attention to us and participated, we love you guys. Thank you. It's a long episode, a lot of fun going through this game theory stuff. And obviously this was fun going through the brackets. For anybody else paying attention at home, Monty's gonna put this up on iTunes and YouTube pretty soon, and use the timestamps. Obviously, we went through all the game theory stuff. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. If you want to catch us, I'm Sal at Queens_guy on Twitter. Monty's at Montecristo, spelled at MONTECRI5TO. You can reach us both at He's a Giant Pod. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. We love you guys. Thank you for spreading the word. We have a bunch more draft stuff coming up. We have a special episode next week with some friends. Right? That's next week, is it?
With when we're appearing on New York Revival?
Yes.
Yep, next week we'll be on New York Revival.
We're going to be at New York Revival talking some draft stuff. We have some other draft things lining up, including the promised big board should be coming soon. And
got that going.
And a bunch of other like final scenarios as we head into the last push, the final month of the draft. So thank you guys. Have a good night. We will see you soon. Go Giants.
Go Giants.